How are we tonight, everybody? It's Thursday night. It's April 5th, and I just got back from A Quiet Place. Not really a place, but a movie called A Quiet Place. It's been very anticipated, and I can say for a Thursday night, the theater was sold out. I mean, I went by myself, and I was lucky to find a seat. I didn't get there very, too much earlier than the actual film started, and I was shocked when I picked my seat out that it was the only one pretty much left. So the film is going to do extremely well, and I'm glad for it, actually, because I found the film very, very good. So for a horror film, and for a director who was also the writer and the main star, sometimes that's really hit or miss. I mean, besides Clint Eastwood, that's very hard to come by because you're basically hopping between seats. And I can tell you again, as a low-budget producer, that, and I've written and produced, but to write, produce, and direct and be in it, I mean, I'm sure I think he got a producing credit, but I'm sure that he didn't do much besides the pre-production side, because when you're a director, it's very hard to do both, so you really have to rely on your other producers to do that. But it's John Krasinski, if I hope I say the name correctly, also from 12 Hours. He's done a pile of things, but and I think he is actually married to Emily Blunt, who got top billing. Actually, she got top billing over him, and that was basically because I guess his name came up so many times in the credits. But the storyline is that we're in a post-apocalyptic type of future, except that it's we didn't destroy one another. It doesn't really say whether the creatures are aliens, or if they came out of somewhere else, something supernatural. It never makes that leap to explain where the monsters came from. There are things in there that show like news clippings and things like that, but even the news clippings don't show where they came from. It's purely, survived by going underground and things like this. So anyway, these things have no eyes for the most part. They don't have any eyes, so they're blind. So they only hunt by sound. And where I guess the last name is the Abbotts. There are other households throughout the area, but we only see the Abbotts for the most part. There is literally the Abbott family, and there's one guy that we see in the film. Otherwise, the family is the only ones we see, which is great, again, for a low-budget, self-contained type of film. That's great. I mean, again, it's very, very hard to make a film interesting when you have a limited number of characters, you have a limited number of locations, and you're just showing what happens to these people in a period of an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, that you have to keep everybody interested. I've seen other reviews where people say the first half of the film is boring, and I didn't find it that way at all. I think that there was a little bit of scares put in the beginning, but for the most part it was a setup for the whole ending of the film. So, but anyway, so the storyline is that we follow this family they try to be very quiet because if not, they're being hunted. And to throw some extra stuff in there, which again, I'm not going to do anything outside of the spoilers, just stuff that you see in the in the trailer. But Emily Blunt's character is pregnant. So, and I'll go into more on the spoilers, but if the scene, I expect the scene in the bathtub, and when we talk about spoilers or you see the film, you know what I'm talking about. But the scene in the bathtub, if I'd be very surprised if that doesn't become a horror stipend. You know, where it's something that's recreated again and again, because it's almost you know, like the Hitchcockian shower scene and things to that effect, where it was just so many great elements to it that I'd be surprised if it doesn't get you know, reshot in other films, you know, basically borrowed, or made fun of as well, you know, where people do little sketch comedies and stuff like that. I'm surprised if that scene doesn't get picked out. But anyway, that scene was great, and as far as the film is concerned, so again, without going into spoilers, I can't really talk more about, you know, the film in general. But I found myself, this is funny, I found myself when the film was over. First of all, I wish the film continued another few minutes. It ended very abruptly on purpose, and it finished the story, but I would have liked to seen it go one step further. But I found myself at the end, when I left the theater, I found myself attempting to be quiet. So you definitely get immersed in the film. You care about this family. You really get to know them for the first half of the film, and the acting was so important for this film because of the fact that you're relying on these actors to bring you into a story that only they can tell. So we have no supporting characters. We have, you know, no other characters that can help bring these other characters to lives other than the main four. So, you know, it's the father, the mother, and the daughter, and the son, and that's it. That's the entire story. Otherwise, we have CG, you know, monsters in there. Which I have to say, for a low-budget film, again, I don't know what the budget was, but it was low budget enough to be self-contained, and they just threw the rest of the money into effects, because the creatures themselves, they did an amazing job on the CG. They did, you know, stuff in the water and stuff to that effect, and I thought the monsters were great. They did a really good job with them. So nothing that didn't look fake or anything like that. There was no Justice League type of, you know, awful CGI for me to bark at. So the good thing is that they threw the money in there, because obviously John Krasinski, since he directed it and it's his wife, and everybody probably came on for, you know, a low scale to do the film, and the locations couldn't have been that expensive. So that left the crew and the effects. So great job on keeping that budget low and taking it into keeping the rest for CGI and post. I gotta say too that lighting in horror movies is so important. Obviously, the sound design with this type of film was less important because of the fact that there wasn't any really dialogue. There was no real dialogue. So all of the post sound was purely sound effects and things like that. There was very little dialogue. In fact, the script was probably this thick because there was no dialogue. So everything was, the script probably was just action this, action that, all the way through. So it was probably I probably threw a 45-page script and said, "Yo, no, this is an hour and 45 minutes." And everybody's like, "Huh?" Because usually it turns out to a page a minute. That's how you know how long the script is. But a script like this, you know, it kind of rocks the boat a little bit because of the dialogue not being there. Of course, there was subtitles because they were doing sign language and things to that effect. But the children, especially Millicent Simmons, she obviously played the daughter. What a great job! What a great job she did. So I kind of want to really get into spoilers. So I'm just going to give you my my thing. I'm going to go with an 8 on this because You know, it is a horror film. It's not a big budget blockbuster, so there wasn't oohs and ahs type of thing. Oh, and I definitely suggest that you go see it in a theater, and not only in the theater, but in a packed theater. It definitely adds something with some people gasping and things to that effect. You get more, I think, enjoyment out of it about having people surrounding you. So I'm going to give it an 8. I suggest you go see it in the theater. I suggest you see it in a packed theater so that you can get kind of the intensity around the room from other people. But I definitely suggest seeing it. And if you don't like horror movies, then you know it's just not going to really be for you. Even though it's got more of a thriller than a horror type of situation. But if you don't like scary stuff, it's definitely got some scares in it. So anyway, that's my review for now, and then I want to jump into spoilers, so either shut it off or I will see you in a couple of seconds. Okay, so we're back with spoilers for A Quiet Place. So I really want to delve more into, I found no plot holes with this, and it really, every piece, if anything dragged, there was a couple pieces in the beginning that dragged, but I can't see anything that should have been removed, because literally everything paid off. So again, you have to bear through a couple of scenes, but they're character building scenes and they're setup scenes that I would not remove. So I mean, I thought the pacing was great. For the story that it had to tell, and the setup for the characters and the sacrifices they had to make, every scene was important. So with the very beginning, we get to see the family kind of shopping, and Bo, I think, is the name of the littlest son. So the littlest son, he really didn't get it. He didn't get the fact that they were in mortal danger, and he rebelled to the point where he had this rocket ship, and you know, it was a shuttle, and he put the batteries back in after his dad removed the batteries, and told him he couldn't even take it. But the sister felt bad for him and gave him the rocket, but did not give him the batteries. And so he took them on his own. And then when they were crossing the bridge, he put the batteries back in, and we kind of see him over people's shoulders. And the daughter, she was deaf anyway. So that's where I think they kind of knew sign language before all that, because she was deaf. And the plot was, of course, that he was good with electronics. Or learned electronics during their period of time. So he was creating, he wanted her to be able to hear the danger, of course. So he was trying to create hearing aids that worked, and everything that he did, it didn't work. And the daughter blamed herself for the youngest child's death. And I think that was really a great way to create this kind of inner turmoil inside the family. So you had this, not only had the death of the child, which a lot of times would break a family apart, but they had to stay together no matter what, and the chemistry, of course, they're really married in real life, so there's already chemistry there, and it really worked. And I think that it showed that the family really loved each other, and you could see it and you could feel it throughout the film. And I thought that was some really great directing. Again, the DP with the lighting that he did, especially when he did the red lighting towards the end of the film, when they turned the lights on. Great stuff. Really, really great stuff. And a lot of stuff happens more at night at the end to show the darkness of what was coming. But anyway, so after the death of the child, then we kind of zoom forward, and now, Emily Blunt's character is pregnant. And we know this is going to be a problem because babies do what? Babies cry. Not to mention the fact that labor, not that I've ever gone through labor, is a very, very, very painful, from what I hear, type of event. So that's going back to the scene with the bathtub. I really kind of want to go into that scene. So the father is preparing the son to kind of, he wants him to learn how to get fish and stuff like that. Plus he wanted some alone time with him, because if anybody was the weakest character, not weak as far as the acting or the character itself, but weak as far as not being as brave, it was the son. The daughter was extremely brave and smart and very, bold. I mean, she stood up to him every single time she could. But for him, he kind of wanted to go under mom's skirts, kind of thing. So he wanted to bring him, to this thing for get the fish and stuff like that. So they were away, and the daughter wanted to visit the grave site of her brother. So she left, and so that left Emily Blunt's character alone. So they have this scene start. I wonder if it actually starts there, but the tension starts there when the bag of laundry gets stuck on the nail sticking out of the stairs. We know we're going to see this thing again because they do this big close-up on the nail. Everybody's like, okay, somebody's going to step on that damn nail. And of course she comes down the stairs and the nail goes right into her foot I mean, she doesn't even stop halfway. I mean, it goes all the way into her foot where she's got to pull her foot out of it, and she yelps but keeps her cool. Which if that was anybody else, I think that I would have screamed my head off if I walked, stepped on a nail and all the way down to where the nail was practically up to my ankle. Ouch. So anyways, now she's bleeding all over the place, and her water breaks. So she's hobbling, her water breaks, and now they're being invaded by the monsters. So now the house is being invaded by monsters. She somehow gets out of she uses the timer. She uses the egg timer to get out of the room because she makes a noise, and and she was able to get upstairs. And while she's going through contractions and everything else, the thing is following her up the stairs, and we kind of see the claw over her head in the bathtub. So meanwhile, her husband and the son see that she's turned on these red lights, and he says, okay, you got to go do the fireworks. So the rockets, they called them, which is kind of an homage to the beginning where the child says to the sister that we're going to get out using rockets. And that's what they call the fireworks, rockets. So I got the connection. So anyway, so now, so he runs and does that at the same exact time as she lets out this scream of pain while she's in labor. The fireworks go off, and the creature leaves to go investigate the other sound. So anyway, great scene. What I think that John Krasinski's character at the end, before he dies, I think this is his flaw, and I wish they had taken away the pitchfork, because he had a choice between an axe and a pitchfork. And I'm like, why are you taking the axe? The pitchfork, you could prod stuff, and the length of the spikes on the pitchfork were immense. So he's about to get jumped by one, and he tries to hit it with the axe, and it doesn't work. But if he had the pitchfork, he would have been able to dodge himself, and he would have been able to prod it off the truck when it went to hit the kids. And of course he sacrifices himself so that the children can live. And I felt the ending, how they figure out that, I thought that was all great with the hearing aid. It was said throughout the film anyway. In fact, when she shut it off in the truck, the whole theater went, "No!" It was pretty funny. So anyway, it was very reminiscent of like War of the Worlds, where it was a very simple thing that would eliminate them. And of course, the last shot, you know, they jack the thing all the way up after they kill one, and they see the other two coming, and you know, it's set up very, very clearly too that they know that there's three. So we see the other two coming. It would have been nice to know if they were wrong and there was another couple of them or whatever else, but they kept to the three. And so when they came out, you know, Emily Blunt, you know, cocks the shotgun, and I thought it was also to try to regress here a little bit. I thought it was very smart how they were able to muffle the baby, because I was wondering about that, how they were going to muffle the baby. They put a mask over the baby with oxygen, and an oxygen mask over the baby to stifle the screaming and the wailing. Very, very smart as far as I was concerned. I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. And but anyway, at the end, they know they're going to kill them, so they were probably safe by the end. Of course, they had lost the father. Sacrifice. I wish he hadn't sacrificed himself, but you know, that's the storyline that they created. Anyway, great film. The fact that I came out of there remembering every piece of plot. The old man bothered me too, because the old man did not have to scream right then. He could have waited 5 minutes. I mean, I understand that he was upset because his wife died or got killed, but all he had to do was wait 5 minutes for them to leave, but instead he endangered them. I don't know if there was any kind of problem with the plot. That's the one thing. I mean, it would have been just as fine if they walked off, they heard him scream later, and we heard a, you know, chunk or whatever else. But to endanger a man and a child because he's in pain, I didn't buy that part. But otherwise, if that was going to point to anything, that was that and the pitchfork. Just pull the pitchfork out of the movie. That's all they had to do. But anyway, great film. You know, definitely I'm sticking with my 8, which for a horror film is especially a monster horror film, is very high. So anyway, go and definitely see it if you've watched the spoilers now. Hopefully you've already seen it, but hopefully you agree with my my notes. Also, if you're going to the movies, keep your cell phone off. So there was a guy next to me, and he was just 4 times he pulled the phone out to text, to look at a text and then reply to a text. So, I mean, the 4th time, I just kind of turned over, turned next to him, and I'm like, I mean, I just stared at him to the point where he finally turned around to look at me, and I'm like, really? You know, acknowledged the fact that I was actually looking at him, and he didn't. From that point on, he didn't pick it up. But there's just no reason, you know. If you want to look at a text real quick and put it away, okay, I'm not going to have a problem with that. But to sit there and type, there's doors in the theater for a reason. If you got into something important, go outside. I mean, I went to see a movie a couple weeks ago, and it was a woman, one row in front of me, so I mean, her screen was bright. I gave her some time to turn it off. Finally, I had to say something because she didn't turn it off, and I you know, I got out of my seat and whispered in her ear, and I said, "Can you please turn your cell phone off?" And if you're in a theater, there's no reason for you to have your phone on. You should already be knowing the fact that you're going to the theater, and you shouldn't be having your cell phone on. So anyway, what this woman was doing, she was playing Scrabble. She was playing Scrabble for the good 5 minutes of the film. The film had already started, and it was a good 5 minutes in before I got fed up. Amazing. So is she planning on playing Scrabble through the whole film? Then why did she come to begin with? Amazing. Anyway, so if you're in a movie, if you're probably watching this, you're probably a movie buff and you probably don't do this kind of thing. But it's amazing what people do with cell phones. I mean, they remind you in the beginning, turn your cell phone off, and yet people still continue to do it. Anyway, I find that they're very disrespectful to the movie makers and to the people in the theater. So hopefully you agree with me. If not, if you think I'm being a little over the top, then let me know as well. Alright, have a great night, guys, and definitely recommend the film.